Awesome.
Hey guys, welcome back to Founder to Founder. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am beyond excited to have Theresa with me today. She is from Mineralogy, a just amazingly cute shop in Chicago. She creates the most beautiful pieces of jewelry, from rings, earrings, necklaces, bracelets, just beautifully done and from like the inside out. She's going to share more with us about herself, and then just all the reasons why I love her and what she does. So, Theresa, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and then also the activity we're doing today?
Yeah, of course. I'm Teresa, and I'm from Chicago, well, originally Wisconsin, but our jewelry brand Mineralogy is Chicago born and bred, and we are in the heart of Ravenswood, a small kind of neighborhood-like area in Chicago, and we have our little shop there where we hand make jewelry and create a lot of custom engagement rings for our clients. And we today will be polishing up some brass jewelry with Arianna.
Yes, I'm so excited. You guys will probably recognize these from issue one. Faith Blackwell and Talena Mormon did a beautiful set, modeling some of her pieces. And then, is that Penny I see with us
This
too?
is Penny. She some people come looking for her in the shop, but she's been a little bit naughty and demanding for attention. So she's hanging out at home a little bit more these days. But she's good on video.
Yes, I love seeing her in your stories. But okay, awesome. So I have my earrings that I'm going to start polishing. And then our first question is, how did you get started?
So I kind of started probably the way a lot of creative entrepreneurs do, and just completely on accident. I was in my final year at SAIC in Chicago, which is the School of the Art Institute, and we had just like an accessories class where we were making shoes and like bags, and just being art school, everybody took things to kind of beyond the general context of a design. So I started working on some jewelry with like natural stone beads, fabric, and wire, and was kind of creating like miniature sculpture pieces based off of some other like fabric work I was doing in an installation class that I had. And between that and an earth science class, I just really found this love for natural materials. We were working with raw stones in the earth science class. And I don't know, a lot of things aligned together at the right time. And I started making pieces for classmates, and then had a professor that owned a storefront pick up some of my work, and just kind of went from there. And it's been a journey of 10 years of just making and keep keeping on putting my work out there, and just really evolving through time. And it's been really great.
That is so cool. I mean, did you see yourself like when you were in school, did you think you'd ever start your own business?
No, I definitely wanted to either be a fashion illustrator, so working for like a magazine or publication. And David Downton was a really big illustrator that I was inspired by, and just like a lot of fine art for publication was kind of replaced by photography. So him and a few other illustrators have been kind of like the mainstays and only people lasting in the industry. I also kind of thought I might like to do something like shoe design or something like that, and I don't know, just anything creative, kind of in line with fashion, or like the creation of textiles. And yeah, I think definitely this is not what I expected to be doing, but I mean, the best outcome is doing something creative every day, and just getting to work with a lot of great clients and having the relationships that we do with them is really, yeah, it's really something that I feel like you couldn't find in a lot of other art industries.
Yeah, it's super unique. And I feel like the arts, it's such a big range. I feel like growing up, like you think of the arts and you only think of like painters and sculptors. And then I feel like as
Correct.
you get older, you realize that there's more like performing arts. But
Hmm.
arts are so intertwined with so much in our lives, from like the jewelry we wear to the design in like kitchens. And so
Exactly.
it's a really wonderful space to be in.
Yeah. school was so avant-garde and they just really didn't believe in the application of like art as a business. So I think that was like another element that I didn't expect to maybe have like a career that was so directly related to the arts. They were very, even like their fashion department, a lot of people, I don't know, just ended up doing things that were different than what they had thought. And they just didn't have a lot of business skills applied to it. So that all of that was kind of learned as I went. And I think the same, applies to pretty much any other alumni that ended up starting businesses of their own from there. But I think, I mean, the greatest value from all of that is just being so absorbed in a creative world. And it's just, I feel like that's the best way to be immersed in the possibilities, whether what you do is what you originally set out to do or if it's something completely different. Just being so involved in the arts and creative, I feel like you'll have it, in your life in some way or another.
I could not agree more. And what really, I mean, your designs are obviously what brought me to your page and became like such a fan. But as I got to know Theresa and the business more, I realized she has this incredible social impact that is so beautifully woven into your business. I'll link the article below where we interviewed her about a lot of her social impact and the importance of it in her business. But something that's been coming up a lot more in conversations that I've seen online is about like ethical practices for businesses, especially small shops. Like you can be a small shop, but are you still holding that bar for yourself to ethically source your materials or the labor? So what do you
Correct.
think about that in your industry and how are you able to implement that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's something that definitely wasn't on my radar when I first started, because I think just like making everything yourself and like you're not really aware of like the greater magnitude of, what you're doing and how that impacts everything when you're kind of doing it as a hobby. But as soon as you start having people purchasing your products, there's really another layer of awareness that goes along with that. And I just really appreciate how, I don't know, I feel like our generation and culture, I mean, between like I guess like the fast and disposable nature of our culture, there's that element that's, we're definitely have separated ourselves from, and, we're not going to be a company like Amazon, but just, I feel like there's a lot of intentionality that comes from a part of our generation that we are lucky enough to work with clients like that's a pretty big reason why a lot of people are shopping small, shopping with a female owned business, and just like wanting to know more about how their pieces are made, who's making it, where the stones are coming from, and how we're making steps in the right direction to be, a better part of social responsibility, also like global responsibility. And I know we're a small company amongst many in the world. So, I know like alone we can't change a lot of things or everything. But even if we know that what we're doing, can be something that we can pass along to others, and hopefully like the more people that are aware of, things in the industry that aren't great, it can continue to pass along to, newer brands or even a lot of legacy brands that have been around for years, and, continue that accountability in the industry.
Mhm. Yeah, very
Um,
sad.
yeah, and
Uh,
I think just in general, jewelry has a very, I don't know, there's just a lot of layers to it between, the marketing from earlier in the 1900s as to what people should expect from a diamond, and like just, all of that is really untrue. Why women should have diamonds, that diamonds are so rare, and there's just like this whole world of other possibilities, alternative stones, working with smaller companies and like fair trade certified companies that are implementing steps to make sure that they come to us or come to their other, contacts with information on where the materials are coming from, how things are being mined, and and even with gold too, the opportunity to work with recycled materials is there's so much metal out there. There really doesn't really really need to be more mined material.
Is it hard in the jewelry industry to source that, or is it becoming, because you mentioned like the fair trade certification, like are you finding
Hmm.
that more companies are going out of their way to get that certification so it's easier to find people that
I
they're ethically sourcing?
Yeah, I think now, I mean, between like consumer demand, and then also like, a lot of us as jewelers demanding that out of our vendors, like wanting to know, different practices of mining or knowing, the content of something or like recycled materials, like that's something, there's a lot of like government certifications that we're able to ask of our suppliers and just like different things that they're able to uphold and different standards that I feel like weren't really maybe in place before because the internet's made it really accessible for everybody to get that information and to start demanding more transparency.
Mhm. They've talked a lot about in the magazine about how it can be on the consumers to demand more from like the media for representation and from the brands that we shop with.
Hmm.
I know in college, I don't know, before I really figured out what I wanted to do and like what my impact looked like, I was like working with some brands that had like just DM'd me and they're like, "Hey, will you promote this if we send you free stuff?" And being in college, I was like, "Yeah, like send me
Yeah,
free stuff and I'll post a picture of it." Um, but now I feel like when I am reached out by those companies, I am very like my bar is definitely in a different place. And so I'm asking like, what are your ethical practices? And
exactly.
crazy how much some people like dodge the question. Like, I don't know, like there's one brand that shall remain unnamed that's been in my DMs and they keep bugging me. And I'm just like, I only want to work with you if you can like provide any kind of backing as to what you're saying or if there's any information I can read. And
Exactly.
they're just like, well, if you go here and then you click here, you might find something, but no promises. And I'm just like, well,
Yeah.
that's a goose chase.
I know that it's just interesting seeing like from when we first started on Instagram to like what it's turned into. And like obviously probably none of us ever anticipated that. And we have not really, well, yeah, we haven't worked with influencers. We've worked with one woman before and we just because we wanted to collaborate with her on something, we just kind of asked her what she expected out of the relationship. And it was just really interesting to see too what she's asking of brands when they ask to work with her and she wants to see their diversity representation. She wants to like understand how their practices are being implemented and that it's not just something that's being used for clout or just to like gather people as consumers and to make them feel good, but to have it really mean nothing.
Mhm.
And yeah, and it just seems like, especially in the clothing industry, and like I don't know very much about that in general, but just like some companies using sustainability as like a way to trick people or to like, I guess like take away from the fact that like no matter what we're doing in our product production, like there is going to be, some element of like waste and there's elements of like damage to the earth like unless you're I don't know there's probably some like ways to be completely green but just thinking about clothing using cotton and like how much energy it takes to create cotton into clothing and then jewelry there's so much work to be done still in the space you know diamonds are incredibly difficult because there's the Kimberley process that was put in state by the United Nations, and that's just, kind of a way for companies to make sure that they're working with vendors that are, going to be not agreeing to mining or like any child labor or slave labor. Things are being screened through customs, and then just like the chain of supply is more transparent. But when it comes to diamonds too, like even we want to work with antique diamonds as much as possible because it's not a newly mined material. But then again, too, like we don't really know much about the diamonds themselves and their origin and like what um like in what circumstances like they came to be in terms of mining and in terms of cutting um you know 50, 60 years ago. So, there's to every like step of progress you make, there's also other elements to consider too. So that's been just interesting to kind of like go through that and see, the things that like we think that we're doing that are good. And then there's like, the other element that we're like, okay, well, what do we know about how those stones came to be?
Right.
And yeah, and even just like on the small scale, like we've had a really great opportunity to work with other, stone cutters and miners. So like purchasing directly from the person who's either mined the stone or the person who is, the actual stone cutter, and they purchased it directly from the miner as rough material, or they sourced it themselves. And that's like it's definitely like a slower pace of work and really one of a kind, and which is kind of in the direction that we like to work. But that's just, I feel like, a really great way to stay connected to where everything's coming from.
No, and I think it's incredible to hear companies and people like you who are the decision makers making that extra effort to do that.
Hmm.
And I know what you said, because I feel like sometimes it's like you have all these things that you want to do, but like, and you're doing things right, but then you're like, but wait,
Yeah, I
we're
think that, yeah,
reusing the
there's
old
always there's always more.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like that, not just in terms of that, but just even like, seeing in what ways so many businesses aren't representing, you know, all of their customers in their marketing and their language. And like, even I just like had somebody point out recently that they couldn't read something I posted on Instagram stories, because the font was really light. And they were like, I'm not visually impaired, and like, I thought you should know. And it was just like it hadn't even struck me. And even just in ways like, a lot of like our websites aren't even, maybe like to the standard that they should be for somebody that, doesn't have a strong site. And yeah, just I feel like there's always something to learn and ways to continue like listening to different communities and like asking, how can we serve you better? And I think we'll all be, in that process of continuing to learn how to like, expand ourselves and serve all of the varieties of people that we work with in better ways. About, yeah, like providing more accessibility, and even just beyond like, I know this last year everybody's, been very conscious about the ways we've been failing the BIPOC community. And but then too, there's a community of people that, again, with like visual impairment, like how are we all not serving them? And just, I think a lot of us are just, and it's normal. It's like people ask who your customer avatar is. And a lot of times it's like, when you're a creative entrepreneur, a lot of times you started doing what you're doing because it was like a singular passion of your own. And all of a sudden you're taking like something that you were doing for yourself because it's like a form of art that you love. And then all of a sudden you're bringing it to a consumer. And so there's like kind of removing like yourself from it, even though like you're such a big part of what you're creating, but still like kind of continuing to take a step back and seeing, okay, like I know I'm creating this and like I'm like part of the creation experience, but then how is everybody else experiencing our products, or like the way we speak, or like how we visually show up for people, like how, even like how our storefront is set up, and just like, all the ways that we can always be paying more attention.
I've learned a lot in this past year about like ADA compliance and how
Hmm.
to make your site accessible. And if you want, I can definitely share later. There's a lot
Yeah.
of plugins for websites. I love
Okay.
how accessible tools are becoming.
Yeah.
Because I feel like initially it was a lot and very overwhelming, because a lot
Hmm.
of it is like coding to make sure like your website can adjust to somebody else's software. Um,
Okay.
but there's also a lot of amazing plugins from these companies that are working to make it easier to make everything more accessible to everybody,
Okay.
because so much
That
is
would be
moving online.
great.
Yeah, I'll definitely share that.
Yeah.
But
I
I think
just like,
that's such a great
I came
point.
across a podcast recently, and like that was the focus. And I mean, there were so many things that were like above and beyond my head that were like code and like things that would require hiring a developer for. But it was just really like fascinating to know all of the things that like I don't know, I just never, never would have thought of. And like, even the fact, like you said, that they can be on, like, somebody can be on a different system that'll help them, view a website better, access it better, or even like now that you can auto generate captions for videos on Instagram, and just, the ways that it's like, we're all like waking up out of this like very like long slumber of like being, kind of like self-centered, and, knowing how we think and feel, and just, not having like a really broad awareness of how does that potentially hurt others.
Hmm. I think it's been really inspiring, though, and incredible to see the way that social has provided this platform of conversation. I mean, the way that
Correct.
you said earlier that you ask your consumers, how can we better serve you? And
Hmm.
I think it's been really amazing to see the shift in brands change it from like, oh, this is what our consumers are demanding of us, we better get on it, to
Exactly.
what we do to better serve our community
Yeah. And
and
I
share.
think like no matter where somebody's at, I think, whenever you start talking about that or start asking your clients or like community for feedback, there's, always going to be this feeling of like, you know, am I doing this at the right time? Or like, am I too late in the game? And it's never too late to like start learning, and to ask people and to be involved. And, I'm sure like no matter where you are, somebody's going to take something with the wrong intention, and it'll be, too late for them that somebody else is starting to become aware of something. But, that doesn't mean that people should stop doing that.
All right. That's, yeah, very well said again. You're very eloquent with your words. I love listening to you share.
I, I mean, yeah, I don't think I'm the best spoken, but thank you. I mean, and I don't know, I just feel like I've been learning to like slow down so much more lately with a young toddler, and we're very like high in like the emotional, learning how to like communicate your feelings, and like, kind of just learning, like I've learned how to be a very good listener lately with a child. And I think just, yeah, the last year has been, I know it's like the worst thing you read on Instagram is like, I'm listening and learning and unlearning, but it's, when it's really like a practice of being so like sometimes just quiet so you can hear what other people feel before you interject your own feelings into something and suddenly make it about you, whether that's, in business or in, motherhood, or, whatever ways you're interacting with people. It's very like, I think we just like always want to interject ourselves and like connect and relate. And it's like, it's totally okay to like realize you have no connection point with somebody other than like you're both humans with feelings, and maybe you come from completely different places, but just like allowing people space to be heard. And, it's, I think, something, a really valuable starting point for everyone.
So I feel like allowing people that space to just be heard can help move
Absolutely.
forward before even saying anything, which is wild, but it's so nice.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's just, yeah, being heard before somebody can even just like start to like, like you said, offer a solution. Or as soon as like if you just begin talking and somebody's like, oh yeah, like, and you're like, well, I just need to like release it, and then, make one step forward into feeling better. And I mean, even to client communication and like resolutions, like thankfully, there's not like really a lot of, major issues that we've ever had. And I think we're very thorough in how we communicate, and probably over communicate to just make sure we're always, on the same page as people. But I think like the biggest thing is just always like kind of removing like your attachment to what you do in your product and like in your craftsmanship, and just being like, it's not about me. Like I made something for somebody, but like how, like, do you want them to experience it and feel wonderful, or do you want them to have like a negative experience, and then you are, like protective over your feelings, which hurt them further, and then, they're gonna even more like disassociate from something that they were so excited to receive, or an experience that they thought would go differently.
Yeah. Speaking of excited to receive, I have polished these earrings. I'm gonna try to like hold them and
They're gonna be
explain.
so shiny because
Right?
they were really shiny before.
Woo! I'm so excited about these. I'm wearing them tonight, so I am so pumped. Um,
Awesome.
but okay, before we wrap up, I do have my final question. Um, what is something you do that inspires yourself?
Um, Honestly, I haven't done it for a while, but look forward to hopefully adjusting my schedule sometime in the future to do that. But just like being in the studio when we're closed, no customers, no other staff present is just like being there, like having our curtains closed so nobody can see, and just like turning the music on and just getting out all of the gemstones and diamonds and just like, I don't know, just like working with the materials, like creating like whenever we're like working on a custom design or like a piece for the store for an engagement ring, it's just like creating everything in like these little arrangements with like the actual stones themselves. And we always call it sketching with stones, and just like watching colors and shapes come together. And I know it's like not, not the form of like what I used to do like painting, but it's just like I find it so like calming and also really inspiring. And just sometimes you can get off on, like off into flow state and like come up with all these like beautiful ideas that maybe you'll make something with. And if you don't, they're kind of there waiting for you when you're ready to.
I love that. I love how personified they are too. No, I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. It's
Well,
just weird. I think like I'm supposed to like have, a passion outside of like what I do, but I think because it was my hobby to begin with, like it still has stayed that. And I think that's, just something too to be said about creating a business that you're doing something that you really love, but then also being surrounded by really great clients and community, and just like everybody has been such a part of the journey with us, and like help it continue to feel like this isn't a job, this is something we love to do, and we just happen to like, it just happens to be our job now.
yeah. No, I mean, it's so corny, but that saying, love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life is so, so true. And I feel like that is something that I've always strived to do as well, because I mean, I love that what you do for work is like what keeps you inspired. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it is the dream.
I think that's how like all of us can, hopefully continue to like do what we do to an even greater ability, is like it doesn't feel painful when it doesn't feel like work. And then the things that like are part of your job that feel like work, like bookkeeping, you can eventually pass off to somebody else, and it's even more enjoyable then.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for joining me for
Thanks,
our
Ariana.
here. This was so fun. I will drop links below to follow Theresa and Mineralogy. They will be, when is your storefront, the new storefront opening?
Oh, I don't even know yet. I mean, we're finally underway with our millwork. So we have a local mill worker creating custom display cases for us so that people can like just enjoy the work a little bit better, have more space to spread out. And yeah, I think we're about like a little over a month away from like those being ready to go. And then we kind of have to time it out with when to take everything out of the store. Put in a new floor and do some other built-in items. So maybe July or August, but I think it's just the pandemic has kind of made planning for that really different. So we're really open and flexible, and are excited to invite people back either virtually or in person.
Well, very
And I
excited.
can't wait for you to come back.
I know. I am so excited. I can't wait to be up there. I love going up to Chicago. It's just fun for we have dogs, so the dog beach is like one of my favorite places. And then
Oh yeah.
now that we know where your store is, like it is
Well,
so
that's
fun.
not far from the beach either.
I know.
Do you go to the Montrose Dog Beach?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
That
super
is
fun.
pop in place. I will drop links below to share her website, her Instagram, so you guys can keep up with what she's doing. And make sure you join us next time for our Founder to Founder. Thank you.
Thanks, Ariana.